Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we are going to be looking at The Mind Illuminated by Kuladasa.
Okay.
And this is a book that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of blends Buddhist wisdom with modern brain science.
Yeah, it's cool, right? It's
Yeah.
like taking that ancient wisdom
Right.
and then like blending it with...
And making it applicable.
Yeah, and making it really applicable for like anybody. It doesn't matter what your background is or what you believe in.
Right.
There's a lot of like practical insights for anyone.
So what is the objective of this book? What are we trying to illuminate?
Well, I think the book is really trying to help us understand how our conscious experience works and how meditation can be used to refine it.
Okay.
So like if you want to shape your personal reality, you really need to like understand the tool that's doing the shaping, which is your mind.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about an intellectual understanding of the mind, right? We're going beyond that.
Exactly, like the author emphasizes that it's about developing an intuitive understanding of your mind.
Okay.
So it's not just like reading about it,
Right.
but it's like through direct observation and experience.
Okay, so it's like actually experiencing what the mind is doing.
Yeah, and it's like moving beyond just like basic mindfulness,
Okay.
which like helps us to kind of moderate our behavior,
Uh-huh.
but really tapping into its true like transformative power.
Okay, so how do we tap into that transformative power?
Well, think about it like reprogramming your mind.
Okay.
Mindfulness is kind of providing new information to our subconscious,
Okay.
which then alters how we react to similar situations in the future.
Okay.
So by becoming aware of like our reactions in the moment,
Uh,
we can begin to shift those like deeply ingrained patterns.
we're essentially retraining the mind.
Exactly. And the book talks about these things called the 5 hindrances,
Okay.
which are basically mental traps we can fall into.
Mental traps, what are they?
Okay, so there's 5 of them. There's worldly desire, aversion,
Okay.
laziness and lethargy,
Yeah.
agitation,
Right.
and doubt.
Gotcha. So 5 hindrances, all very applicable to...
They can manifest in like our meditation practice and also in our daily lives.
Okay.
So they can be like real obstacles to progress.
So I think we've all experienced laziness and lethargy
Absolutely.
at some point in our lives.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is there's this interplay between directed attention,
Okay.
which is our ability to focus our minds, and these hindrances.
Okay.
So the more we actually like engage in focusing our minds,
Yeah.
the weaker those feelings of laziness and lethargy become.
Okay.
So it's like building a mental muscle.
So like just doing it actually strengthens our ability to focus
Exactly.
and weakens those hindrances.
Precisely.
But then the counterintuitive thing is sometimes when we're focusing better, we get sleepy.
Yeah, it's like our mind is used to associating turning inward with sleep.
Right. It's like when we turn inward, that's when we go to bed
Exactly.
and shut off our minds.
Oh. And there's another reason for that drowsiness too.
Oh?
Like calming the mind can reduce our overall energy levels.
Uh-huh.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing,
Right.
but it's just something to be aware of.
So if we're nodding off during meditation, how do we combat that?
You got to rouse yourself completely.
Yeah.
Like re-energize the mind.
Okay.
Maybe do like a walking meditation or some light stretches before you sit.
Now, the book also talks about the difference between attention and peripheral awareness.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain that to me?
Yeah. So attention is like a spotlight. It's really focused on one thing.
Okay.
And peripheral awareness is more like a floodlight.
Okay.
It's taking in a wider view.
So is peripheral awareness constantly scanning for things that might need our attention?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And what's interesting is as we train our attention, like focusing on our breath in meditation,
Yeah.
our peripheral awareness actually becomes more refined too.
Really?
It learns to like filter out distractions
Okay.
and focus on what truly matters.
So it all works together. So we're improving both at the same time.
Exactly.
Now, this book also talks about moments of consciousness. What are those?
Okay, so think of it like the conscious mind is a screen,
Okay.
and it's displaying these moments of consciousness like a film strip of reality.
Okay. I can picture that. And what kind of moments are we talking about?
So there's 7 types.
Okay.
6 are for our sensory experiences like sight, sound, touch, and so on.
Okay.
And then there are these special binding moments.
Finding moments. What are those?
Okay, so they connect those individual sensations into a cohesive experience.
Okay.
So it's how we experience like in-breath or that red apple.
So it's the glue that holds it all together.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Conscious intention, plays a huge role in determining what shows up
Okay.
in those subsequent moments of consciousness.
Great.
So what we choose to focus on shapes our reality.
So if I'm always focused on negative thoughts, I'm going to experience more negative things.
That's the idea. But the good news is that the reverse is also true.
Okay.
So if we cultivate positive intentions, that will also shape our reality in a positive direction.
We have more control over our experience than we realize.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where the transformative potential of mindfulness really shines.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about calming the mind,
Okay.
but it's about cultivating a new way of seeing, a new way of being in the world.
Wow, this is really making me think about how I direct my attention throughout the day.
Yeah.
I never really considered it before.
Yeah, it's a subtle
Yeah.
but powerful shift.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about how our minds work,
Uh-huh.
the more equipped we are to create the reality we want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this whole idea of our intentions shaping our reality is kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
So how do we cultivate that kind of intentional focus?
That's where the practice of mindfulness comes in.
Okay.
It's not just a buzzword. It's really a tool for recognizing those moments of consciousness as they arise.
You mentioned before that there are different levels of mindfulness.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
So the author describes 4 distinct levels. The first level is basic, where we start noticing our reactions, like getting angry or stressed,
Mm-hmm.
and choosing to respond differently.
So it's like hitting the pause button
Exactly.
before reacting.
Yeah, like instead of just like knee-jerk reacting, we
Yeah.
take a moment to pause
Yeah.
and then choose a different response.
So the second layer.
The second level is about maintaining a stronger, more consistent mindfulness throughout the day.
Okay.
So we become less reactive and more intentionally present.
So instead of just noticing, we're actually starting to shift those reactions?
Yes. And then the third level,
Okay.
which happens mainly during meditation, is where we delve deeper
Okay.
and we start to reprogram those underlying thought patterns
Okay.
that shape our personality.
Okay.
It's like going into the control room of our minds and rewriting the code.
Wow. And there's a fourth level.
Yeah. The fourth level is the most radical. It involves reconditioning the innate tendencies that cause suffering.
Okay.
It's really profound work. It's like the heart of the Buddhist path to awakening.
So mindfulness can be used for a whole range of things, from just managing stress to actually achieving deep spiritual insights.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And the more we cultivate mindfulness, the more these benefits ripple out into all areas of our lives.
So the book talks about pain and discomfort that can arise during meditation.
Oh, yeah.
Why does it seem to ramp up when we're trying to focus?
It's a common experience. You settle into a groove and then suddenly your knee aches, your back screams, or there's an itch you can't scratch.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's fascinating. The author explains it as our minds resisting the practice.
Yep.
It's like our minds want to stay in their comfort zones.
Right.
So they magnify these sensations to pull us away from the meditation.
So it's a test of our commitment.
You could say that it's an opportunity to practice mindfulness and equanimity in the face of discomfort. Okay.
The key is to approach those sensations with curiosity and acceptance rather than resistance.
What if the pain is really intense? Do we just have to grit our teeth and bear it?
Not at all. The book actually advises making the pain your temporary meditation object.
Okay.
Not to overanalyze it,
Mm-hmm.
but simply to observe it with a detached awareness.
So almost like saying to the pain, okay, I see you, but I'm not going to fight you.
That's a great way to put it. And often simply acknowledging the pain allows its intensity to diminish.
Okay.
It loses its power over us.
That's a really valuable skill, not just for meditation, but for life in general.
Absolutely. And it applies to difficult emotions, too,
Okay.
like fear, anxiety, anger.
Yeah.
They can all be approached with the same mindful awareness.
So meditation becomes a training ground for navigating discomfort in general.
Exactly. We learn to cultivate an inner stability that helps us weather any storm.
Now, we talked about attention and peripheral awareness. Before, the book also mentions alternating attention, which sounds like multitasking. It is, in a way, it's our focus rapidly switching between different things.
Well,
we all do it, but experienced meditators can observe this process without getting carried away by it.
so they're aware that their attention is flitting around.
Right.
But they're not losing that overall awareness.
Precisely. And that ability to observe without getting caught is key for developing deeper concentration.
Okay, how does this all relate to peripheral awareness?
So peripheral awareness is constantly filtering information
Uh-huh.
and flagging things for our attention to focus on.
Okay.
But at the same time, what we choose to focus on actually trains our peripheral awareness
Okay.
to become more selective.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. It's a dynamic interplay between attention and awareness.
Okay.
And through meditation, we start to see how even subtle distractions like a thought or a sound can pull our attention away from our chosen object of focus.
And that's where metacognitive awareness comes in.
Yes.
The ability to observe our mind without getting lost in the drama.
It's like having an inner observer.
Who's watching the show but isn't caught up in the storyline.
I like that analogy.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not trying to stop our minds from thinking or feeling,
Right.
but we're actually learning to observe those processes with more awareness.
Exactly. And as that metacognitive awareness grows stronger, we become less reactive, more spacious, more able to choose our responses rather than being driven by those unconscious patterns.
This is all starting to feel very nuanced. How do we even begin to cultivate these skills?
So the book outlines a path of meditation with 10 distinct stages.
Okay.
Each building on the previous one, it's important to approach it systematically,
Okay.
mastering the basics before moving on.
So no skipping ahead.
No shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's like learning an instrument. You have to build a solid foundation.
So even if we're not aiming for enlightenment,
Right.
these skills are valuable for anyone.
Absolutely. The benefits of meditation extend far beyond the cushion. They can enhance our focus, emotional regulation, relationships, and overall well-being.
It all starts with cultivating that mindful awareness,
Yeah.
that ability to see the workings of our own minds with clarity and compassion.
Beautifully put. And the more we understand about how our minds work, the more freedom we have to shape our experience, our reality.
This deep dive is really giving me a lot to ponder. It's like I'm seeing my own mind in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of this work. It's a journey of self-discovery, of awakening to the incredible potential that lies within each of us.
Okay, I'm ready to dive into some specific practices. The book mentions something called experiencing the whole body with the breath.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
It's a powerful technique for developing concentration and a refined awareness of sensations.
Okay.
It involves bringing your attention to different parts of the body while maintaining a connection to your breath.
So like a body scan, but with the breath as an anchor.
Exactly. And as you practice this, you might notice subtle sensations you weren't aware of before,
Okay.
like tingles, vibrations, pulses of energy.
I'm actually feeling a little tingle in my hands just thinking about it.
That's the power of attention.
And the book points out that as we become more sensitive to these subtle sensations, we might even experience what some traditions call energy currents, or the flow of prana.
Okay, now we're getting into some mystical territory.
Yeah.
Is there any scientific basis for this, or is it just woo-woo stuff?
The author acknowledges that there's no specific anatomical structure in the body that corresponds to these energy currents,
Okay.
but he suggests they're actually manifestations of the unification of the mind, a phenomenon that's been observed in brain imaging studies of experienced meditators.
So these sensations are arising from the mind itself, not necessarily a physical process.
That's the idea, and these energy currents are often accompanied by feelings of joy and bliss, which is why they're so compelling for many meditators.
So it's not just about achieving a blank mind, there's a pleasurable aspect to it.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes that this joy, this bliss, isn't something we force.
Okay.
It arises naturally as a byproduct of the unification of the mind.
Okay, now I'm really curious to try this whole body breathing technique. The book also talks about the conscious mind being like a screen.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
This is where the author delves into a fascinating model of consciousness.
Okay.
He suggests that the conscious mind is like a screen onto which moments of consciousness are projected.
Yeah.
These moments come from various sources, the senses, emotions, thoughts.
So our conscious experience is like a constant stream of these moments.
Yeah.
Each one a snapshot of our reality.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, and remember those binding moments we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
They play a key role in creating our experience of a unified world.
Exactly.
It's how we experience that red apple or the sound of my friend's voice.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that conscious intention plays a key role in determining what shows up in those binding moments. In other words, what we choose to focus on shapes our reality.
So if I'm constantly focusing on negative thoughts, those are more likely to show up in my conscious experience?
Precisely. But the good news is that the reverse is also true.
Okay.
So if we cultivate positive, wholesome intentions, those will also shape our reality in a positive direction.
So we have this power to choose what we focus on, and that choice has a ripple effect throughout our entire being.
Exactly. And this is where the real transformative potential of meditation lies.
Wow.
It's not just about calming the mind, but it's about cultivating a new way of seeing, a new way of being in the world.
This is all so fascinating. It's like we're peeling back the layers of reality and seeing how it's all interconnected, how our minds are constantly shaping and reshaping our experience.
And the more we understand about this process, the more empowered we become to create a reality that's aligned with our deepest values and aspirations.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. It's like I'm seeing my own mind in a whole new light.
That's the beauty of this work. It's a journey of self-discovery, of awakening to the incredible potential that lies within each of us.
Now, the book mentions these sensory subminds. What are those, and how do they fit into this whole model of consciousness?
So that's where the author gets even more granular in his exploration of the mind.
Okay.
He suggests that beneath the level of conscious awareness, there are these specialized subminds,
Okay.
each responsible for processing information from a particular sense.
So like a submind for sight, a submind for sound, and so on.
Exactly. And each of these sensory subminds has its own unique way of organizing and interpreting information.
Okay.
For example, the visual submind takes in raw data from the eyes and constructs our experience of shapes, colors, and movement.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do these subminds communicate with each other?
Okay, and how does that information ultimately reach our conscious awareness? That's a great question. The author suggests that these subminds are constantly interacting, exchanging information, and competing for our attention.
Okay.
And it's this interplay of the subminds that creates the rich tapestry of our conscious experience.
So it's like a bustling marketplace of ideas and sensations, all vying for our attention.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating is that these sensory subminds don't just process information from the external world. They also generate their own internal sensations and feelings.
So like the feeling of a tight chest when we're anxious.
Yeah.
Or the butterflies in our stomach when we're excited.
Precisely. Those sensations are arising from within, but they feel just as real as any external stimulus.
Okay, so these sensory subminds are doing a lot more than just relaying information from our senses. They're actually playing a key role in shaping our emotional and physical experience.
Exactly. And what's even more intriguing is that these subminds can be influenced by conscious intention.
Okay.
For example, if we intentionally focus on relaxing our body, we can actually calm down the activity of the submind that's generating those feelings of tension.
So it's like we have this ability to consciously intervene in these subconscious processes.
Precisely. And that's one of the key insights of meditation.
Okay.
By becoming aware of these subminds and their activity, we gain greater control over our experience or reality.
This is all so fascinating. It's like we're getting a glimpse into the inner workings of the mind, and it's far more complex and dynamic than we ever imagined.
And the journey of self-discovery only deepens from here.
Okay.
As we continue to explore the source material, we'll uncover even more profound insights into the nature of consciousness and the transformative power of meditation.
So we've explored these sensory subminds, but the book also mentions something called the discriminating mind. What is that exactly, and how is it different from the sensory subminds?
Well, think of the discriminating mind as the CEO of our mental boardroom.
Okay.
It's responsible for those higher level functions like planning, decision-making, judgment.
Okay.
It takes the raw data from the sensory subminds and kind of weaves it into a story of me and my experiences.
So the discriminating mind is what gives us our sense of self.
Precisely. It allows us to reflect, make choices, navigate the world.
Okay.
But it can also be the source of much of our suffering.
Okay.
Because it tends to cling to those stories, those ideas of who we are, even when they no longer serve us.
Right. We get so attached to our identities, our beliefs, our perspectives.
And that attachment, that clinging, is what Buddhism calls self-clinging.
Okay.
It creates a sense of separation between ourselves and everything else.
So how do we break free from this self-clinging?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And it's a question that can only be answered through direct experience, through the practice of meditation.
Okay.
But what the book suggests is that beneath those layers of self-identity, there's a deeper, more fundamental awareness.
Okay.
A pure consciousness not bound by those limitations.
So it's not about erasing ourselves, it's about connecting with something more expansive.
Precisely. It's about transcending those limited notions of who we think we are.
Yeah.
And tapping into a deeper wellspring of being.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive into the Mind Illuminated.
Yeah, it's a really great book.
Yeah, and I think it's given us a lot to think about in terms of how our minds work and how meditation can help us to understand ourselves better.
Absolutely. And you know what's really cool is that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
There's so much more to explore in this book and in the practice of meditation.
So to our listeners, if you're interested in learning more about the Mind Illuminated,
definitely check it out.
We highly recommend picking up a copy.
Yeah, it's a great read.
And until next time, happy meditating.
See ya.